Right, my hearties, Arzen Pirate team over there, fellow Buccaneers, Cavaliers, Privateers, etc., so on, so forth, literati, right? Um, Welcome back to the Sacred Arbor here. I just a little while ago finished the setting the stage video. It's now night, but I got some things done, and we're actually going to be filming another piece in the streaming breakbulk content, which will be fun because maybe that is what I'll do is I'll send it down the stream, but broken up with breakbulk cargo from other times and places. Um, it's an interesting publishing market these days. That's all I'll say. As a creator of literary commentary, I really could not ask for more. So good job to all you engineers out there. Um, yeah, so we've got another a pretty important sequence to go through for the sake of keeping us abreast of this main literary thread in the game, our home here in the Sacred Arbor, how it came to be that way, who was with us when it happened. These are all just, getting the story down kind of elements. But that way, if there are some viewers who watch through the sequence, uh, you know, the literary commentary upon this piece of literature will have been, transmitted to you um, in the full completeness of experience that the video game gives, right? Like, because I have to go do all these things. So any player of the game has to do these things. Anyone playing an archer in the whole game has this experience, right? And so uh, here we're in the business of looking at at how to grow literary commentary from the inside of a literary mechanism such as this stage, uh, this platform of Dragon's Dogma 2. Um, we're going to have to remember that at this time of night when I write, and this was one thing I wanted to look at as a writer because I'm looking at my mechanisms for putting out literary commentary here, which is all and so at night if I were writing verbally, which I did, as I did for years, I'd be sitting here right now doing the same thing, um, uh, drinking tea, sitting in my chair, the parrot sleeping next to me at this time of the night, and of course, so and this is a feature of that style is that uh, I can pause, and the way I run my brain in this late in the day, I will sit and pause and then continue the sentence. But when you read the sentence, there's you don't have a 40-second to 2-minute pause while I think about how I want to say something and check on the parrot or whatever, or and I was realizing that's what I commented on before. This happened in the previous video, is that it was the sound in the environment was such a part of the scene that I had to like recognize it, and it was so in essence it was distracting me from what I was saying, and I couldn't continue forward without making a comment on the environmental factors, and then blah blah blah. But that kind of thing just happened again, where the sound of that environment, like that particular uh, noise emanating from the home crystal there, uh, is just too loud in my headset, is what it is. So I'm gonna turn down the headset and and move over here because that sound, it's like it's just too hypnotic, right? That's right. That's right, buddy. The townspeople depend on you. Um, Boy, these elves, so reliable. You know, who's this guy? Who's this guy? There's this fifth guy in the middle. He's not with us. Are we? Come on, stop.
Carium, kemen rostindume nun meltol.
Oh, see what I mean about how you just have to go in the direction enough, and the game grabs you. Um, So this is where we're going, and that's the question, the literary commentary we're going to start analyzing in this scene, or we're going to bring up in this scene as a part of the current literary fabric we're putting together here in Dragon's Dogma 2. Um, but what is a druid and what is a dryad, right? Because we have the ability to work with both of those concepts at the same time in this, specifically in this kind of setting here. And I'm not sure that most people know that those concepts come, that 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 those things come to us from different sources, right? So a druid, and so colloquially, I use the word druid a lot, right? I'm half Irish. I live in the woods. I like trees, as do many people around me, right? So I use the word druid a lot in conversation, and it's a very, but that's the thing is colloquially it has come down to us. It's a very flexible word. Like for example, most of the sort of field biologists I encounter a lot and live around are very likely to have read something like John McPhee's Conversations with an Archdruid. And there's a lot of environmentalists around, and that's a very common literary channel for them to have been participating in for over the last 50 years, right? So, Conversations with an Archdruid is a book that not only will they have be familiar with the metaphor and concept and usage of Archdruid as it is in that book, but they will be familiar with the contents of that book, right? And so I'm just pointing out one thing, like that's a very practical feature of my environment is that uh, druid is a very useful word, right? And I use it in my literary commentary a lot too, because where druid stands in literature and where it comes to us in literature, right, is about as literary as you would expect from druids, if I'm allowed to put it that way, right? Um, because they were so the Celts covered lots of Western Europe and the British Isles and stuff, and there was a couple different Celtish flavors, but generally speaking, their civilization had this kind of tribal structure and then kind of reliable features around it, around like the whole civilization basically shared these reliable structures, and of course they're ultimately they couldn't compete with uh, the economic structure of the Romans, which was so different. It was imperial. And so the tribes people and the people, it was like tribes and chieftains and but a cultural arrangement that replicated itself throughout there, right? Is what it was. So in that structure, um, uh, there were like three pretty important like classes that were literary, right? They were essentially literary professions. And one was the bards, which obviously, and like it was funny. It's like, boy, I hope you don't piss off a bard because like they're gonna change 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 the soundscape of every public place to be full of jokes about you, kind of thing. So bards were powerful and like they had an effect because they would make music about whatever they saw, right? And that music was a part of the fabric of the society itself, of course. And then they would pass on all the cultural knowledge through the stories they told and describe events, and stuff like that. Get it recorded down in song, kind of thing. Um, which great literary tools. Those are literary tools that I dabble in. I love using for all sorts of things, poetry, all sorts of stuff. You know, and then there's a class, and so they're pretty important. The bards, and then there's a class of like seer type people who are like prophecy type people who would like, and I said it's literary, and it is because it's like prophecy is technically like a literary sort of uh, 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 endeavor, right? Generally, right? But I mean, these guys are doing it, I think, with like entrails and stuff. I don't know, but nothing you wouldn't see in the Old Testament, right? Those guys, and then there's the Druids who were like sages, right? Like they were the lawgivers and the interpreters of law, right? So they were like I would almost want to say that that there was a sort of like a see. There's really no analog really because I can make lots of funny jokes here, but they aren't complete until I like put like make up something to make it fit, right? Like I was gonna say something like, I would want an element of Confucius and and an element of Buddha in it to try to like, you know, try to point a finger at their role, right? But then they also participated in human sacrifice, so it's like, well, I'd have to come up with something like Confucius, Buddha combined with like uh, what is the third element, right? So there is no. So what I'm saying is there is no viable analog. I'd have to go invent one that would put it all together, and make it make sense, and be funny. Because apparently, they were kind of a human sacrificers of some extent. Maybe that's overblown. Hopefully, I don't know why you would need to sacrifice a human being in order to like understand, interpret, and settle the law, right? I don't know why you would have to do that. But maybe it was somehow it had some level of efficiency uh, in the minds of the Druids that we would just not see as being actually efficient in the long run today, right? Maybe it's like, no, actually, that's probably not efficient in the long run, right? Uh, Maybe having paper gave us some advantages, you know, rather than being trapped in these repeating cycles that you could never see your way out of. Um, uh, but yeah, so those were the actual Druids. That's the source. Is like they were actually like Celtic leaders, you know, who were part of this power structure that was much more dynamic. They weren't like sole leaders or anything, but they were up there. But like obviously, there's several other professions and classes and institutions, and like, for example, like the blacksmith would have also been a significant uh, um, a feature of society, right? With significant importance to them. Um, but like so they were maybe one amongst some professionals, and maybe part of the group of the very obviously literary professionals who were very important to Druid society. Like the literary nature of their society was obviously marvelous, right? Just absolutely marvelous. That is one thing that you can see about that. And just to demonstrate how true that is like it, one of the funniest Celtic jokes of all time, right? Is always plays out all the time based on the literature of Camelot, right? Is because so remember, Arthur's a Celt. Well, he's a Briton, right? Who's actually his kingdom is suffering collapse as it's conquered by Anglo-Saxons, right? Like that's the position he's in, and then the Round Table falls apart, you know, due to all these evil influences around feeding on the human weaknesses of the inhabitants of the different chairs at the Round Table, you know. Um, and it slowly collapses, and but Arthur goes off to Avalon and doesn't necessarily die, right? He maybe still around. Maybe he'll come back, right? That's kind of the gist of it, right? And then so today, like in a lot of people in general English language Anglosphere, like on the radio, on TV, even in conversation with people with college degrees from universities in America, for example. Just in this one place I see this coming from a lot, is 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 they'll think that there's something about whether Arthur was real or not, or if that's interesting or a relevant question, right? And like no, it is interesting. It is interesting, and it's obviously relevant that there's figures that you could look at, you know, when there is a historical figure that you could look at and say, hey, that figure looks like he was based on that guy, or it looks a lot like that. That's relevant, right? But it isn't relevant in the sense that it's not relative to what the story is talking about. It's not relative to the piece of it. Doesn't like they think them thinking that that is somehow a feature of the legends, like who was the real King Arthur, right? Like trying to find one person. And even for the people who admit that, oh yeah, because of how literature works, and it was passed down in a certain way that it, you know, it makes sense that there wasn't really one Arthur, but you know, probably many Arthurs or an archetype or whatever. But even the people who can rationalize it out with it like that, they're showing that their mind is still trying to track down to the King Arthur, right? Like the meaning of this literature is in who that guy was, right? And that's what's so funny is that is just basic like Celtic literary technology, where because of the structure of their civilization, that was everybody at every tier of society was organized around a circle, right? So yeah, there were probably a bunch, as in maybe all of them, Welsh kings, you know, uh, 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 in Britain, the whole island originally, who had the experience of King Arthur and lived like King Arthur, right? Who had their round table, right? And there were probably, I mean, because every time you would go anywhere you were at, you would have that setting, right? And even when you get down to the smaller householders, when you're sitting around, if you go out in the field and you work all day, and then you're sitting around the table at night with the 12 people who work all day together, having their dinner, playing their games, listening to all their music, and staying up for entertainment in the house, right? Every night, you know, and it doesn't. Maybe they're doing pretty well and they're drinking wine. Maybe they're not doing well and they're drinking water. It's still the same setup. And generally speaking, there's a chief, right? He's got a wife. It's not uncommon that one of the knights gets in trouble for liking the wife too much. It's not uncommon that several of the other knights get distracted with other adventures and either come back with rewards or disappear or with funny ideas and speaking weird from another kingdom, you know, or they just die and everything collapses because you're recording a historical moment, right? Because that invasion and that process took hundreds of years, right? And so those tales arose out of it, right? And those tales come from that previous Celtic civilization that fully inhabited uh, uh, the British Isles was coming to an end, and it recorded itself in its own one tale that it put into our literature, right? And so like everyone was King Arthur, you know, or one of the knights at the table, or you know the dog sleeping under the table, you know, or one of the guards at the door. And then if you're the guard at the door, you see the bard come in and play the story and tell the story about King Arthur, and you know everyone's having a great time, aren't they? You know. And as they wrote the stories, those bards, as they wrote the stories that psychoanalyzed what was happening to the Celtic civilization, they gave us our Camelot literature. And that literature is still functional. Look at, we still apply it to, I mean, RFK Jr. is running for president. That's how much Camelot, and we're the ones who applied Camelot literature to what they were as presidents, as a president and a family back in the 60s, you know. Um, when they won popularly elected office, people who'd been raised in Camelot literature were like, "Hey, that's Camelot," you know. And history doesn't disagree, does it? Doesn't seem to disagree at all. Um, but that's a beautiful piece of literature and where it comes from. I just wanted to point out that that's how well the function of literature in Druidic societies functioned, is that who's anyone who's still literate in English, if you ask me, can just look at it and see where it is and how it entered our language and how it entered our stream of literature and has been there ever since. You know, but like they left their they the way they got into our language, you know, that cycle of stories that just showed the pattern of their civilization as it was repeated, you know, like at each level. Um, uh, I mean, geez, it's just brilliant, right? So anyway, the Druids were like the lawgiver kind of sagely class of a civilization that was that literate. So that's what a Druid was, right? So that's what you mean when you say Druid. Dryad, that is a tree spirit from Greek mythology, right? So that is not like an Irish or Druid origin. They're not coming from the same source. Although, if you ask me, they're related because, of course, if you're gonna start looking at the ancient Greek, you're gonna find out that the word Druid uh, is the ancient Greeks describing the real Druids. Like, yeah, the tree people, you know. Um, uh, so, but that the word Dryad itself, the tree spirit idea, like the nymph, the tree nymph, like Daphne, who at the when the Indo-European entity known as Apollo attempted to force himself on her, who flees and turns herself into a tree, right? And see, that's the thing, isn't it? It's still about, and the Celts are Indo-European also, right? But it's still about these two different Indo-European cultures, and they're interacting at the edge of literature and the edge of civilization, and often the edge of literacy, right? That's what the Greek myth shows. It shows you where, how, and why a dryad turns herself into a tree, right? A sea nymph, uh, sorry, a tree nymph. Um, but that's kind of why, though, that uh, uh, Daphne is an iconic uh, uh, thing to the dryad metaphor, right? Um, but then the dryads had you know a real like nymphs of different sorts were very common uh, 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 entities in Greek mythology, of course. And the tree nymphs were, I think, my favorite thing about them is that pretty much describes them, and it makes sense to me, is that they were generally speaking shy. Because like if you live in this world that's forests and oceans and mountaintops with storms on them and thunder gods and earthquakes and volcanoes with subterranean whatever, and so if you've been raised in the forest and you leave the forest and see that, you're probably going to be like a little shy, right? uh, but then I believe it was Artemis, of course, is a huge fan of all the different nymphs in her forest. And so it's basically an Artemis's domain that most of the Dryads end up hanging out, you know. Um, uh, but that's the mythological archetype for the word Dryad. That's where it comes from. It's a tree spirit, right? A tree nymph in Greek mythology, um, commonly associated with Artemis, right? Um, yeah, and so but both of those are, see, for my study of history, uh, the word druid in the history of the Celts is really important to literary commentary in general. Uh, and then Dryad, of course, is super functional on the psychological side of literary commentary, the artistic side of literary commentary, because it's been there from the beginning in our Greek mythology. And then since I live in the woods, like those are some of the most fluid frameworks I can actually use to discuss literature. You know, like if I were to talk about, like, do some content writing literary commentary about Shakespeare, which I've never done, I don't really have plans on it. Um, uh, I could write a literary commentary that basically just uh, investigated the literary archetype of a dryad using As Good as It Gets, and I could write like like a 2,000 page commentary on just that small play, just everything that's in there about it, right? Like that's how, and obviously this is originally like Shakespeare, right? Um, uh, I'd say it's pretty clear it goes back to my literary roots in Greek and my cultural roots in being half Irish, and having kind of always dug those literatures, right down to James Joyce. Um, remember, like the the Celts who gave us uh, the civilization that left behind a track of itself in our Camelot art. Um, oh, I just lost the thread that time. Oh, right. Are the same ones who gave us the First Amendment for literature in the United States of America. I guess that's just how long it takes me to construct that sentence properly. I had to make sure I got it right, because James Joyce's Ulysses did that. That's why we have the First Amendment for literature. And so that's still an expression of the same sort of thing, because what is Camelot if not, hey, your history books aren't going to tell you this part, but we were here. you know, uh, that's funny. I think that's real funny. Uh, which is what James Joyce did for just Dublin. You know, uh, right before World War One, we were here, right? And then he gave us the tool to say we were here over in the United States if we ever needed to say we were here. So anyway, let's go see. So as a literary commentator, I wanted to bring some of my street cred on nature-based literature before we dive in here, right? But see, by painting that backstory, I brought you along with me. All right. So this is the princess that we did such a bad job of rescuing. I think. Could you notice how little panic I had? Because I wasn't like I believed like an elvish princess was really in trouble. Like that whole thing was probably staged for their fucking prince, to make him feel like a tough guy. You know. Remember, I just wandered around. What's going on? What's that? Where's the body at? Anyway, this is that person. Um, here we go. We're stepping onto the stage now, and the artists at Capcom are now taking over the threads of this video.
Morvea Kuruir. You're no elf.
Nope. Very, very keen eyesight.
Halan Lome Meltol. Firnis Nambawe. I am called Darren. My brother taught me to speak your tongue. So different from our own. Do you understand me?
Like, it's so perfect. Whoever wrote this scene, it is so perfect that her English is almost perfect, right? Because, and this is not a comment about anyone but elves, right? But like that gets our Western archetype of elf perfectly. This is the first time I've spoken it. So that was her first expression of book knowledge, right? That is an elf. That is a perfect portrayal of an elf, realistically, as we see them in the West. I think it's awesome. All right. Yeah, I understand.
Learned the words, but
Oh yeah,
this is
right.
the first I use them.
Yep. See, that's how I knew that this part of content was going to start. Is after I filmed the last one, I backed into here and triggered it, and then I just had to reload. Be like, okay, well, I guess this is going to have to be our Druid Dryad video, right? Because I saw this conversation going on. And that's the tools set that they gave me. And this is what I can do with it. All right. So I saw this conversation an hour before I started the video or something. And then I said, oh shit. And then I erased it and I did my stuff and I was ready to go. Right. But otherwise I have no control and I don't know where the plot goes. So,
Others of your kind have come here, but my people warn them away.
yeah.
Oh, but I cannot stay. I must, see to the Arbor Heart.
All right. The Arbor Heart. That sounds important.
The elves hold this place as sacred. It stands to reason they would not welcome outsiders in their midst.
Let us take pains to cause them no offense.
I agree. You never want to offend an elf. They're like the nicest people around. I mean, wood elves get a little weird, but, you know, we've all read The Hobbit. All right.
My duty is to care for this, our sacred tree. The Arbor Heart, she is called. She has been with us a very long time.
Just speaking as a conservationist, the vibe already pretty solid. If you're gonna carve out an elven kingdom, this setup will resonate.
She is nature's very heart, and a pillar of strength for my people. We have always lived in harmony with nature, and the Arbor Heart is our connection to the land. Yet, day by day, her strength is failing.
Oh,
I must
climate
give her
change.
nourishment of the soil to help her recover.
Industrial degradation. Yep. And the Japanese artists see the same thing everyone else sees.
A special kind, called Gwifencha in my language. I know not what you would call it in yours. Once, a dwarf wandered into the arbor and gifted some to us. It filled the Arbor Heart with life.
Jeez, I hope it's not like Miracle Grow or some shit.
Now,
Elves don't necessarily pay
little
attention to like
remains.
things.
Too little for the Arbor Heart to recover her strength in full. She begins to wane.
Uh-oh. This doesn't sound too different than Lothlorien.
Do you know of this substance? It must be found outside the arbor somewhere.
Oh, we got our first mission for the elves.
If you find any, will you
With
tell me
Gandalf.
where it lies?
I will.
You can always depend upon me to translate for you, Master. Gwifencha is the
Oh.
elvish word for scale cinder.
Look at how useful Athena is in this context. Right? Now I know what I'm looking for and I can go out and find it.
In
Thank you,
your
Athena.
tongue, it is called scale cinder. Where can it be found, I wonder?
Uh-oh. I'm afraid I'm about to be pushed out of the little garden I've
Now,
been in this
scale
whole time.
cinder is a byproduct of the Batali smithing style.
Know it
A
all.
Batali blacksmith ought to be able to tell us more.
Oh! Look at that. Look at that. That is an interesting, emergent literary illusion. I mean, that name is going to have that effect anywhere you put it, right? If you're doing literary commentary. But yeah, we inadvertently brought our Western literary study inside this game with us, with fully armed to the teeth with all of the literary tools we have at our disposal. And here we have Athena translating Elvish and showing us the way to a blacksmith that can get the thing that the elves need to save their special tree. Uh, that uh, that is some fucking emergent literary commentary, right? It's something I'm experiencing.
If you see him on your journey, will you let me know?
Oh yeah. All right. The Ailing Arborheart is the quest we just picked up.
Salma Arenfeld, Alekano Nanderin.
Yeah, I agree. Speak with the Batahali blacksmith. Yep, so that's a scary region with bigger monsters, worse weather, horrible climate. Um, and I'm guessing just because those things go hand in hand, probably better armor and weapons. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that that's what I will find when I make that transition, right? Uh, but at least the weapons will already be there waiting for me, and because of and see, I want to explain. You know, after you guys have watched the couple of videos here in Sacred Arbor, is the fact that there are better weapons out there in this new region that I have to go to, which I would never, if they didn't ask me to save the sacred tree, I wouldn't go to that region, right? I would just play in this region. It's got animals, there's grass, there's weather, you know. The peasants are people I can understand and help very easily, right? The other place looks pretty hostile, right? But what's going to happen when I go there, right? One, I will be able to work out how to solve the quests and survive. I will learn the combat required of me to get through and complete the story. So it will improve my ability to play my character. I admit that, right? But then the fact that the good armor and weapons are out there, those wouldn't have lured me out there. I would be happy. Like this guy. Like, hey, I've got the wolf hat. Like, I earned my cloak at Lothlorien. You know, Cervantes, the archer, is very good. You know, I wouldn't sweat it. You know, even Athena, I'd be like, you know what? It's not worth having to spend a week exploring a hostile desert and dealing with hostile desert inhabitants just to get you better armor, because you don't need that armor if you're not there, right? So, since this game leaves everything up to you so much, I would probably stay here for another 2 months. And I might even do that. Like, it will not probably be soon that I go across that border. I've got a lot to do before I do that. But since they're tying it to the life of the sacred tree, they got me. I'm like, yeah, no, I'll go. But see, they're the ones who get me to go for their tree, right? But what's going to happen when I go there is that I'm going to take the gold that I siphon out of the alchemist network, and I'm going to use it to buy that good armor, and I'm going to stick it on lower level pawns, right? I'm going to put it up as gifts for simple things straight from Athena. So she has gone to the harder area, purchased you weapons and armor to use against these lowly goblins back here at level 15 and level 20. And then she gave it to you in exchange for a potion. You know, because that's something I can bring to the experience of many users of this literature. You know, I mean, literary commentators in the past could do similar things, you know, with similar technologies, but like this one's pretty good. This is a pretty good technology. I'm not gonna lie. They did good. You know, that's fun. And that's because the way I said it is what it is too, because I'm not like that. I'm like this Gandalf guy. The way he's communicating through here and like what he's doing with his pawn, and then Bear here who's engaged, you know, and this is what I'm doing with Athena, like permanently, other than her, you know, armor and weapon giveaways as I just came up with, is I decided I'm going to leave her always just hunting Cyclops because it's the beginner first monster and because it's from the Odyssey. And so rather than use pawns to do all of my work for me and get her to kill like 30 of every type of monster, I'm going to go kill all those ones myself, right? and I'm just going to send her out on like thousands of Cyclop trips. And so thousands of other players will have experiences of having Athena help them kill their first Cyclops or whatever, or whatever number of Cyclops, you know? And maybe, and I'll put a gift of an expensive piece of armor on it, as much as I can afford, which will be a lot, because above me in this other tier are that alchemy network that's figured out how to just print gold wherever they want to. And like, I don't have time for that. I'm using this mechanism to make literature, not to make awesome results like transmuting gold. Right? Like, if you can turn like a potion into 10,000 gold, right? Um, that I think that's a valid way to use this piece of literature. But like, I would have to spend time setting up that quest and like retrieving it and going back and forth and blah, and it would take away what I'm using the mechanism for, which is to make literature. But like any literati, right, we could always look at what alchemists were doing and be like, oh, thanks, I'll just siphon some gold right into what I need. There you go. Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, you guys are smart for using the literary superstructure up there to, to tell all your jokes with. You know, that's real smart. Thanks for the gold. So literati definitely recognize alchemists and what they do, and I will pay you back tenfold, and it'll all work out great, and all the gold I print will just go to armor for lobies, right? To improve everyone's gameplay experience, make it more fun. Someone's to be like, man, this pawn named Athena came and like killed the Cyclops so fast, and then the reward was like the best piece of armor I've seen in the whole game, right? And then she just uploaded and went away back to her home, right? And I'm going to be able to pass out that experience from where I'm sitting with very minimal of my actual time invested into that process, other than just learning to play video game for several weeks or whatever. Anyway, Arzen Pirates, there is our look at Druid versus Dryad, the origin of those two words, to us today. And then, that's how the quest starts, that at some point we'll experience the next step of. Thanks for watching. Ooh! Put your bow away! Jesus! You know what? These controllers... Why is the trigger so close to the fucking pause button, right? Like, think about weapon safety just a little bit. Jesus.